Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. I'm your host, Erica Del Pozo, occupational therapist, Miami girl, and founder and CEO of Joy Energy Time, where it's our mission to build a better healthcare industry by ending healthcare provider burnout. In these episodes, we'll discuss topics like stress management, personal and occupational well-being, energy, lifestyle, and more. You'll also hear from loads of healthcare professionals like you who provide us with their advice on burnout prevention and share ways that you can become your most lit up self. Ready to get started? Let's do this. Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. It's me, Erica, your host, and today, during the time of this recording, I am in Pennsylvania. We have officially completed leg one of our road trip, our 30-day long road trip. Mike and I are driving from Florida to California, but we're making this an awesome 30-day adventure-filled road trip. So we have completed the first leg. We left Florida and we made it to Pennsylvania. That's where Mike is from. We are staying with his family for a few days. We have a wedding later today. And this is a nice little break from being on the road for a week. We are recharging our batteries. We are resting, sleeping, eating normal foods. Being on the road, even just for a week, was fun but exhausting. And we have a lot more of that coming. So after we leave Pennsylvania, we're going to California, but we are taking a very long northern detour. So we're going to from Philly, we're going to Pittsburgh, then Michigan, then Chicago, then through South Dakota, all the way up towards Glacier National Park. And we'll be there for a few days. Then we're going to head to Seattle and then down the coast all the way to Napa, where we will end our road trip. But the first leg of the road trip was awesome. We went to Jacksonville, stayed with some friends, went to Savannah and Charleston, which I absolutely loved. It was my first time there. Then we went to Charlotte, had some family there, went to Colonial Williamsburg, which was really fun. I was there as a kid. It was fun to be there again for a few hours. And then we headed to DC, and we were there for a full day, spent some time with some friends there. And now we're in Philly. Well, technically, they live in Reading, but no one... I feel like I didn't know about Reading, so it's easy to say Philly, but they live I think this is an hour or an hour and a half away from Philly. We saw a Phillies game. It was so much fun. But anyway, just lots of fun, but exhausting. It's good to feel like a normal person, do some, we have been doing exercises and we've been very active, but it's like sometimes we're on the road for sitting in the car for so many hours. So it's great to just be in a house for a few days. So yeah, I will keep you guys updated. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you my guest today, Erin Clarelli. She started Y.ot.ga, and she's based in San Diego. She's an occupational therapist, and she teaches yoga, mindfulness, self-regulation, sensory processing, and self-awareness to children of all abilities. So we talk about bringing yoga to the clinical setting versus bringing your skills as an OT to a non-clinical yoga setting. So we talk all about that. Erin is incredible. I have to read her mission from her website. Her intentions are, as an occupational therapist and avid yogi, she strives to provide children of all abilities a place to feel accepted, centered, and safe. She encourages creativity and play in order to strengthen the body and mind to promote independence and success both within her sessions and in daily life activities. So it's really cool when you have an OT with all the skills and knowledge and background that we have to do something like this. And that's the beautiful thing about OT, that we have this skill set that is so special and so different. And that's why OT is so hard to explain to people, because we can literally work with infants in the NICU to rehabilitating someone post-stroke, or what I'm doing, working on well-being with healthcare professionals and to prevent burnout. And she's helping children of all abilities, engaging them in yoga, but using her OT knowledge to work on all the things I've mentioned, like sensory processing, body awareness, mindfulness, all that stuff. So great conversation. Loved having Erin on the show. I know you're going to love this. So let's get into it. Hey, Erin, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I've been looking forward to our talk for some time now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we got it to work.
Yeah, I know we're both so busy. So can you tell us more about your story and more about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been working as a pediatric OT for just about 3 years now. I had went to school out in New York, and once I graduated, my husband and I kind of decided to take advantage of me not having a job yet and find a job where we wanted to live. So we moved out here to San Diego, and I found an awesome job in a pediatric clinic. And I was there part-time, and then also under the same clinic, I was the other, 20 hours of the week, I was in a public school setting. So I did that for the past 2.5, again, almost 3 years. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I left that job. It was definitely bittersweet. It was a great foundation. I had great mentors, great OTs, PTs, and speech that I collaborated with. And I left because I have started my own business where I do yoga and occupational therapy, kind of a hybrid. It's called Y.ot.ga, and I market it as occupational therapy inspired OT.
Awesome.
Wait, yeah.
Yeah. Occupational therapy inspired yoga.
Hold on, I think I'm saying it backwards. I'm like, wait, something does not sound right now. Yeah, it's yoga. No, it's occupational therapy inspired yoga.
No, actually, I didn't catch it, and then I had to say it because I do things like that all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's important. The reason I kind of market it that way is because I want families to know, and I want other professionals to know that it's yoga inspired by OT, and not that I'm providing OT inspired by yoga. If that makes sense, because it's definitely different,
Yes, yes. I can't wait to ask you more about that. But first, I want to ask you what inspired you to become an OT?
Oh, good question. So it was actually a Google search. I went away to school for 2 years because I just wanted to go away and, have that time. And I was it was a health promotion program down in South Carolina. And I knew I wanted to do health promotion. I knew I wanted to help people, of course. That's kind of a main theme, but I knew I wanted to do something a little bit different than like nursing. I didn't want, to be honest, I didn't want to go to school for as long as it would be to be a doctor or a PA. And I found PT, and that was really cool. And then on the website that I was looking, the Stony Brook University, the school I went to, they also had a link from the PT site to the OT site. And as soon as I started reading about that and reading about how it's, this comprehensive, whole person kind of approach, and that I could work with kids, especially kids with disabilities, that was my inspiring moment. That's what lit the fire. And I had always known I wanted to work with kids. I've always, from a young age, worked in whether it was babysitting or I built a gymnastics program at a local sports facility. So when I found that I could do that as a profession and as a medical profession that had research behind it, it kind of just lit the fire. And from there, it was a perfect match, and my mindset hasn't changed since.
Yeah. It's funny how people find out about OT. It's like you stumble upon it,
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like I grew up saying I want to be an OT, but what I think is cool is now, the more I talk about it, the more people are like, oh yeah, I've heard about that, or, my sister's going to school for that. So I think it's definitely up and coming, which is awesome because the more OT, the more happy people. That's what I say, at least.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I know that when I was in school for occupational therapy, we had this special day where we had this lunch thing with other professions and we were given a case and we had to do teamwork. And a lot of the DO students and nursing students, I mean, not all of them, but a majority of them, at least in the room that I was in, didn't even know what we did as OTs. So that was painful.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
just because I think now, I mean, I like that our school had an assignment like that, because that's the point for you to learn about your each other's roles. But I think now OT is becoming more mainstream, which is good because we have such an important role.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, there's still people that I come across, and you have to explain what OT is. And I also think geographically here in San Diego, there is a huge population, especially for the area that I'm passionate about. So I think it's a little more well known where I am, but I think
Mhm.
that varies where you are.
Yeah, exactly. I know I went to AOTA in San Diego like in 2013,
Yeah,
and that was cool.
yeah, I know. I missed that one. I'm kind of sad I did. I could have used it as a time to explore San Diego before we moved out here, but yeah, the conferences are always awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Wait, why can you help me?
Yes. And that was kind of as, starting a business and being an entrepreneur. I was like, I love this name, but are people going to be able to say it? So,
Yotiga, right?
yeah, Y.ot.ga. So OT kind of slapped in the middle of the word yoga.
Okay, I had to look at it one more time in my notes. I'm like, I just have to pronounce it how I see it. But it's so cool. I love how the OT it's emphasized in the yoga.
Yeah, exactly. It was just kind of one of those things that popped into my head. I actually, to kind of give you a little bit of a background for the yoga piece, I took a course called Asanas for Autism and Special Needs out here in San Diego. The teacher is absolutely incredible, and she's now traveling all over. She goes to Greece, New York, Canada. And in the middle of the training, we started talking about the business aspect of it. And she's like, well, the first step is, you have to think of a name. And within like minutes, I was doodling in my notebook. It just clicked. I was like, oh, I could just throw a T in here and it can totally encompass what I'm doing. So I ran with it.
Yeah, I love it. I just had the idea for joy energy time. Like one day I was in the pool and it hit me like just from the heavens, and I had to write it down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like you could spend time. And then, you know what, even after that, I was like, okay, this is cool, but are people going to be able to say it? And then I'm trying to think of all these other ones. And it's funny, but for me, it was kind of like my wedding dress, It's like I found the one I like. No matter anything else I find, I'm going to compare it back to the other one. So finally, it's just like, okay, that's it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, your business name is like your wedding dress.
Yeah, it's important.
It is important. So you kind of explained a little bit what it is, but can you go into a little bit more detail, like who is it for, and what's your philosophy behind it?
Yeah, definitely. So my philosophy is to provide the benefits of yoga that I've seen for myself through, I found yoga when I was in school to become an OT. I found it as a way to stay physically fit, as a way to, mentally cope with the time that I have to invest into schooling and the stress of studying and managing working and all that. So my philosophy is to find this to bring these benefits of yoga and provide them to all abilities. It doesn't just have to be, the fit females that you see on Instagram, or, it doesn't have to be a true, like, real religious practice. There's an in between where just doing these movements for your body tap into so many different sensory systems. They strengthen your body. You leave mentally feeling, kind of disconnected and reset. Um, so like you had asked, who is it for? It's yoga is for everyone, but for me, I really focus in on both the parents, the kids, and then even the siblings. Because siblings of children with special needs are a unique kind of breed. They learn to be empathetic, they learn to be flexible thinkers. And then they also sometimes have needs that aren't met in their part because, a child with special needs does take that energy from their parents. So it's a whole family kind of approach for me. My main population that I do work with right now, like I had previously said, is autism, or just, sensory processing difficulties. Not even, I try to stay away from the word, disorder. And then anxiety. I even work with some kiddos with some feeding issues because we use these, we use the yoga moves and the breathing techniques and the mindfulness strategies to kind of work through exploring different foods or learning, just being around different foods without having that anxiety spike. So I've just found that kind of like how OT populations are so broad, you could feel like you're going to go into like a skilled nursing, or you're going to go into a rehab and you're only going to be working on like a biomechanical kind of approach. But then you start working with these people and it's like, well, no, there's so many different angles to look at a client. And I find that with my yoga as well. And I think that's why it intertwines so nicely with the OT approach.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love yoga personally, and I have used yoga also with different populations. Like I remember doing field work, and it was in a mainly orthopedic geriatric setting, and there was a lot of actually I did an in-service on chair yoga, and all the PTs and OTs loved it because it was different at the time. I mean this was like 5 years ago, but yeah, I think yoga is I've seen like how yoga has come into the clinical setting, and I think it's just so cool.
Yeah, and I definitely think I love that you brought up, it coming into the clinical setting, because that kind of brings me back to the little confusion I had about my name. There's times where I was in the clinic setting and, I still do some independent contracting for clinical work where I do yoga within the session, but it's a modality, it's something to supplement my OT services. It's not that that's all we're doing. So what I'm doing is kind of the reverse, the flip of that, where we are here for yoga, but I'm going to put in my 2 cents, or like my knowledge about the sensory processing piece, or the self-regulation piece, or the mental health kind of confidence and, anxiety coping piece. So I definitely think in the clinical side of things, it's on the forefront. I think holistic medicine and like a proactive approach versus a reactive approach. At least I'm hoping that's the way medicine will go. So I think in 10, 15 years, it will kind of be everywhere.
Wow. I feel like I could frame what you said, proactive approach versus reactive approach.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
I think that's I took a whole CEU on how they were calling it was a really long CEU on healthcare, and they called it sick care a lot because it's this whole shift of now we're, instead of treating the illness, now we're shifting towards the preventative proactive approach. And I think yoga, like you mentioned, that's just one of the ways in which we can help with that.
Yeah, definitely. And especially targeting the youth, these things that I'm learning, these mindfulness strategies, or these like perspective shifts, of accepting myself, or being your own individual. Why is this not something that was taught to us as kids, instead of having to grow up and reverse it? Why isn't it just something that is a foundation, that it's it's just what we know, this is how the world is and this is how it should be. So
yeah, I know. I'm right there with you. I'm wondering, like, where was this mindfulness when I was having the worst anxiety in my life when I was in high school?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about it, because I have that emotional connection to it. And I think if we could get to every youth out there, and then that's why, I reached out to you. I want to spread more information about this. I want to spread more information about the trainings that are out there, because the more practitioners, or the more just kind-hearted people that are out there trained in this to share it with people, the more people will reach. So
Yes, yeah, that's why I love that. That's why I started the podcast to
which is
help.
awesome.
Yeah, to not just my message, but the message of so many others. Like this, it's such a small world, the podcast world, at least for now. So it's so cool. So I love what we're all. I love what we're all doing. We're all
Yeah. And even outside of your podcast, on Instagram or social media, you've already connected me with so many people. Just the other day during one of your features, I found I'm forgetting her Instagram handle right now, but another OT that you had featured. Like, oh, she's in San Diego. So, I reached out, and here in San Diego, if you end up here,
Yeah.
we have a Facebook group of, just San Diego pediatric therapists, OT, speeches, and PTs, where I was like, hey, like if you're in the area, why not join this group? So another connection was made just from, social media, which is awesome.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
was responsible for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You're
Oh, of
connecting
course.
more people than you realize.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love hearing these little things. It's these little things I hear every day, like that make me fulfilled and like I know I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds you why you're doing all the hard things that you're doing. So,
Yeah. So, well, I want to say congrats on leaving your full-time job. I just left it wasn't full-time, but I just left my job because, like I told you before we started, we're doing the road trip to California.
hmm
So, well, congrats on that. And
Thank you.
how was that like whole process, that decision? And I mean, when did you feel ready? And what's the whole transition like and all that?
That's a wonderful question. So, it was a very, very hard transition for me. I think more so emotionally and comfort zone wise, the people I was working with, for the people I've been with for the last 2.5 years, the kids and the families, there's a lot of time and, relationships built there. So I think one word to sum it up would definitely be bittersweet. I was excited. There was a lot of yoga and a lot of meditation that happened to reminding myself, that this is it's a leap of faith. It's scary, but that's a good thing because, if you're not scared, you're not growing, or if there's not that little bit of unsureness, if that's even a word, you're not growing. So
Mhm.
I think I didn't really truly know I was ready. It was kind of an idea, came up through reading. I just finished the You Are a Badass book.
Oh, I love that book.
So it was like halfway through there, and I was like so empowered. I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask, I'm going to see if I could go down to part time at the clinic I'm at. And even just taking that first step was hard. And then there was a transition period with that where I was unsure if it would work out on the business side of things, if it would work out on the time side of like what days would be available for me. And long story short, it just didn't work out that I could stay part time. So that's when the decision was, okay, do I step back into my comfort zone and stay full time with this company where, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm kind of going through the day to day very easily, or, do I take this risk and leave it completely? And that was when I came home and sat down with my husband and had a heart to heart, including a lot of tears and a pros and
Yeah.
cons list.
Yeah.
And then from there, the next day I went in and said, as much as I would love to stay, I think I need to open the next chapter. And I think that at that point, when I had finally made that decision, there's a lot of that limbo for those few weeks of, was I
Mm.
going to go part-time? Was I not? Once the decision was made, it was like a whole weight was lifted off my shoulders, and it felt right. I was like, okay, I made this decision and now I'm moving forward. And it was 2 to 3 weeks with those families. Each session, I kept telling the families, I was like, I am more present with the kiddos than I have ever been, because I know these are like my last few.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really eye-opening to me. It kind of knowing that change was coming almost made me a little bit of a different practitioner. I was super focused in the sessions and I was absorbing every second of it, instead of feeling sometimes like, oh, I got to get through this session. I have a report to write right after, or so that kind of opened up my mind to more of the practitioner I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of taken those lessons, and I'm now doing that with my independent work and my Y.ot.ga stuff. So it definitely wasn't easy. It was scary. And it's still, sometimes I wake up, I'm like, did I really do that? Did I really just throw away this secure full-time job with my benefits and this and that? But, the time is now. If I don't do it now, I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah. Wow, you're speaking to my heart.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you're very similarly, going through the same thing. It's scary, but if that's where your heart is, it's the best decision.
Yeah, my last day was last week. But the time this will come out, it would maybe a few weeks would pass by. But it's like I felt like I was a little bit more present because of what you said, cherishing those last moments and taking the leap. Because my husband and I, we were both in the same boat where we were happy, where he's a PT and I'm an OT, and we're just doing our thing, and the next step would be, okay, our lease is up, let's buy a house. And we're just like, there's something missing. And then actually that started way before, because I had started my business, and like it's been almost a year in business, but haven't really took me so long to actually create my first CEU, because I was doing that on top of adjuncting and on top of treating like part time, but still it's like I feel like I've been in a limbo for a year. Like it's weird.
Hmm.
And now,
I could totally relate.
yeah, I feel like I've been in limbo. I have my training wheels on, or I'm like a bird that hasn't left the nest. And now
Yeah.
where I'm jumping full time into my business, and I know a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for this limbo I've been in, because I considered every part of like my job and adjuncting as like an angel investor into like funding my living, and, to support this dream that I have to, so it's been like just all these emotions. So I can relate.
Yeah, definitely. It's so crazy that we're both going through such similar things because you're right. The training wheel analogy is so true. It's, like I knew I wanted to do it, but I was trying to balance it between all the other things that were going on. And now that I have the time, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to hit the ground running. So it's exciting.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
both of us.
I think it could be so easy to let fear stop you. But like you said, if a fear doesn't allow you to grow, or I think you said something like that. Like if you're comfortable, you're not growing. So it's turning that fear into faith.
Yeah, exactly. And using it as a fire to, like fuel you and push you through it. And like I said before, and that's where, every so often you have to come back to, whatever it is that you practice. For me, it's my yoga and journaling and meditation, just to remind yourself that, you're doing the right thing. You need to trust the process and keep moving forward.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I love journaling too, by the way.
I love it. I think a lot of the, like the, I guess I could label it as self-development and like
Hmm.
this like moving forward, it also aligns with OT, becoming living your life to the fullest. We
Yeah.
have to OT ourselves sometimes.
We're preaching. We're living what we preach. We're practicing what we
Exactly.
preach.
Yes, exactly.
So you
Uh,
consider yourself obviously like an entrepreneur.
yeah, and like I've kind of said, I never, I didn't grow up saying, I'm gonna own my own OT business. So
Yeah,
yeah, it kind of just fell in, and I am definitely not a businesswoman. Like
me
I
neither.
never. I think as OTs, we're very left-sided, or sorry, right-sided. But like the logical left side that's a learning curve for me. But again, it's a challenge. It's self-discipline to sit down and read about the legalities and the numbers and all the things that we have to put in place to be entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
And then it's also knowing, I think, your own limits of, okay, I'm not like for me, I am not good at, the numbers, the adding and the, keeping things organized and the spreadsheets. So, you make that decision, you hire someone. Or for me, luckily, my husband is very number oriented and he is so gracious to help me with that stuff. So
Hmm.
it's having insight into yourself as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important. I'm gonna ask you something a little bit later for in terms of entrepreneurship. I want to ask you more about Y.ot.ga. So do you currently have a center now, or like how does it look like?
Great question. The short answer, no. My dream is to have, I envision it as like a safe place, a safe haven for families,
Hmm.
a small little studio, sensory friendly,
Hmm.
with sensory equipment, but also a yoga studio.
Hmm.
Um, so that would be my dream. Right now, I do a variety of things. I rent spaces from local yoga studios.
Mm.
I also work in neighborhood parks. Luckily, in San Diego, I'm able to, the weather, I'm able to do that. And I think just being out in nature is a whole nother sensory experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I do that. And then I also do in home. So some parents prefer that, I come to the house and do a class for the whole family, that the siblings
Oh.
and the parents join. Yeah. And those are probably my favorite. I think because it is so well rounded and so holistic, and you have the parents there with you to see the benefits, and then they want to carry it over and do it all the other days of the week that you're not there. And then I also do in-home where it's just one-on-one with me and the kiddo, and the parents using that time to catch up on house chores or things like that. So I am very flexible in what the families need and where they need to meet, or do they want a group setting? Do they want a one-on-one setting?
Wow, that's so cool. That's so holistic. Like the whole like family-centered practice, like you're doing it.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you see like a little bit just what I thought of when you said nature? Do you see yourself involving a nature component in your your future center?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I would love to have some kind of like outdoor garden that the kiddos are, in the beginning, some kind of routine. We go out, we water the flowers, or we pick some, lavender to put on our eyes during Savasana or cloud pose.
Hmm.
Whether it's that or, I have a windowsill, I have little soil boxes, I'll make it work. But yeah, that's a great question. I would love to have some kind of sensory garden / nature space accessible for the families.
Yeah. I like read something a while ago. I did an episode a few months ago about nature and health. And do you feel like kids, or maybe people in general, but especially kids, are a little more disconnected from nature, like nowadays?
Yeah, I was gonna say nowadays, definitely. I think sometimes, there's a class that I teach that is specifically centered around nature, where we have to walk around the park or the beach or wherever we are and find, different parts of nature and then bring them back, and then we have to build like a face or a yoga pose out of it with paper and glue. And there's some times where I give those kids that unstructured time, like, okay, go walk around in nature, let's find something. And they don't know what to do. It's like, really, like, what am I, and I think it's a combination of time being much more structured for kids now, just
Yeah.
because that's the way our society is. And when I was younger, it was, go, you take your bike and you ride around until the sunset, or until you knew it was a time, like dinner time, and you had to come back in. And
Yeah.
I think because of safety reasons and things like that, which I totally understand. I'm not a parent, but when it comes that time, I'm sure I will not be letting my kid out, until sunset, just
Mm-hmm.
because times are different. But
Mm-hmm.
it's encouraging families, they seeing these kind of activities that you can do that are structured in safety wise.
Mm-hmm.
There's a boundary limit, there's directions given, there's rules and expectations, but it's not that, we're holding our kids' hands and saying like, oh, look at this leaf, or let's explore this tree, or it's a fine balance between that child driven and that adult structure to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, that I think kids in nature, or just kids have limited access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, thankfully in San Diego, the culture here is more driven towards that. We have the hikes, we have beaches, we have camping. So families out here are a little bit more open to it. When I'm, like I had said earlier, originally from New York, and back on Long Island, that just isn't a thing. There's nowhere really to hike. There's, you go to Jones Beach and you sit there for a little, but there's not much space. So I think it's geographic too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from Miami, and it's interesting here because there's a lot of water activity like boating and going to the beach, but it's not like the rest of Miami and South Florida. It's just a lot of city. It's not like I've been
Mhm.
to, like, I didn't even think that we weren't that green until I went to other places, and then I realized we're really not.
Yeah.
It's just like we're just, and the thing is that you're not going to the beach every weekend, so it's like mostly you're indoors because it's too hot, and there's not a whole culture around like, first of all, there's no hiking, so it's like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
really, it's just a little different down here, and I really began to appreciate like Seattle, for example. It's like complete 360, just like that. It's so green, you know,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're so true. Like the Pacific Northwest is
so
just,
green.
yeah, I know, especially compared to here. We're like desert. We got a lot of brown here.
No, but San Diego's so pretty though.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, the climate can change that too. So,
Yeah.
but there's finding the silver lining in it and finding ways to get kids outside, or just, and again, holistically getting parents and families outside, just detached from, even just stepping outside of the house, sometimes detaching yourself from the responsibilities of the house chores and the bills and this and that, just getting out in nature to disconnect somewhere where there's no cell service.
Yeah, that's my favorite um, remedy for stress is taking a walk and leaving the phone behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you because I know this is your wheelhouse in terms of yoga and mindfulness and self-regulation. How have you experienced through your work or you've seen yoga helping those with their self-regulation?
Where do I start? So it's definitely correlated. I think so. If I it depends on the population or the age that I'm working with. If it's a
Hmm.
younger group, it's a very kind of passive approach because they don't have that full insight yet.
Hmm.
I am still talking about it. I am still using scenarios for me. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, when my mom doesn't let me have a toy, either 10, and I kind of verbalize that whole process for them.
Hmm.
But I don't necessarily expect like a preschooler to be able to say, I'm feeling mad because my brother took my toy, or, like
Right.
go through that process. But just so they know that, what does this feeling feel like? So we talk a lot about that. We read a lot of storybooks. We do a lot of like facial expressions. We use mirrors. And then once we kind of have that foundation of what these emotions are, I pair them with some of these yoga moves, like an example that I use a lot of times for kids that are feeling sad, rock pose. So it's where you're kind of kneeling and your belly's on your knees and your head is on the floor, or a yoga block or a pillow. Um, and we talk about how this could be, a pose where, from an OT perspective, I don't tell them this, but this is where their visual input is occluded. Sometimes I'll tell them to put their hands over their ears. Their auditory input is occluded. It's completely calming because all of their weight is on their joints and their proprioceptive system is activated. Their head is below their heart, so their vestibular system is activated. And that's kind of what I mean about the passiveness. They are doing this pose because I've attached it to an emotion, but systematically and medically, there's these neurological things happening for them that are just all calming, especially for kids with autism or sensory sensitivities or overload.
Hmm.
So that's an example of a yoga move. I could go through all of them, but we will make this podcast way too long. But and then we also do breath work. There's
Mm.
one that's called Volcano. So it's I tell the kids sometimes when I'm mad, I want to explode, and sometimes when I explode, I will kick and yell and scream and, explain all the things that a tantrum looks like. And even sometimes, I'll act it out for kids. And in that moment, it's so silly and they're like, oh my gosh. But it attaches what they do to someone outside of them. So they don't feel like it's only them and that they're guilty for doing it, that someone else does feel these things and that it's okay. So first it's validating that. And then for the volcano pose, I say, instead of exploding and hurting others or hurting my belongings or making mom or dad upset, I can use my volcano breath, and we breathe in really deep, and we clench our fists really close to our face. And then I wish I had a video here, but we shoot our arms up to the sky and we explode like volcano,
Oh,
lava coming out of a volcano, and we breathe out our air and we make the noise. And we do that a few times. And for kids, I find sometimes, if you tell a kid, a young, old, a high schooler, an elementary age, to take a deep breath, sometimes it's like, and
yeah.
that's not going to activate, their parasympathetic nervous system like we want it to. So attaching it to these like visuals and these body motions with it slows it down. It makes, it helps us accomplish what we want to happen in their bodies, and it's fun for them. It's like, oh, I'm a volcano, or and these again are all things that I learned in my training, and have added my sensory or OT perspective to.
Oh my
So
God, that's so cool. So the rock pose, is that child's pose?
yes, exactly.
Oh, okay, I feel calm when I'm in child's pose.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and there's times where I'm teaching a class and yeah, it becomes overwhelming. And I'm like, oh, I'm starting to lose control of the kids. And I'm like, okay, let's all take a deep breath together. And really, it's for me.
Mhm.
So I think it's a tool that can be used for all. And after I do these yoga poses or after we do some of the breath work, I'll have a kid that came in, kind of bouncing off the walls, running in circles. And when we lay in that savasana, or we call it cloud pose, they are completely still. And I could sit there for 5, sometimes even 10 minutes where these kids don't even want to get up and move because they've done the work. They've gotten that sensory input. They've gotten the breath work where they're neurologically ready to rest. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of, from a sensory perspective, there's a lot of things that I guess someone not trained or not an OT or not trained doesn't necessarily understand. Okay, there is, it's not just an exercise, it has a lot of other benefits.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of like behind the scenes things that are happening that the kids don't know about, and sometimes the parents, they're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "I sprinkled my magic dust."
Yeah.
But that's when, and that's where that holistic view of, then there's that parent consultation and that parent education of, when your child's in this position, this is what's happening internally. So I love it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I've done, like, with some of my older kids, it's yoga. I'll find yoga on YouTube, and I've done it in the clinical setting, and of course it's very different than, it's like the bringing the yoga in the clinic setting type of thing, and we've done it, and I love when I can implement it because it's just like so cool.
Yeah, exactly. And you see the benefits, and kind of like what you're saying just now with me being connected with other people, like that's your aha moment, like, oh, this is why I do what I do. And for me, it's, when those kids are lying there, or when they kind of recite something back, if a kiddo isn't sharing a marker during our craft, that's not very kind. You're not thinking about my feelings, or, and I'm like, oh, you do listen, you do get it. So,
yeah, like it's like that moment, this is why I do what I do.
Exactly.
So for the older kids, I'm sure this applies more in terms of practicing mindfulness. And I know mindfulness is so trendy, but I think for OTs, we've been learning about mindfulness for a long time, and now it's just trendy among like the rest of, I don't know, it's like a wellness trend. But how do you work on mindfulness, and what is mindfulness?
Yeah, great question. So you were right. I think the older populations kind of understand it more, but that I still work on it with my younger kind of preschool and elementary age kids. So for the older kids, we talk about mindfulness is, I relate it to being present, being in the moment, not worrying about what happened before yoga class, not worrying about what's going to happen next after yoga class, and really investing in, sometimes I'll use like the social thinking terminology, and using your whole body listening and keeping your brain focused on what's happening right now. And then we do activities where there's a wonderful curriculum. It's called Mind Up curriculum. It's used in schools, and I use some of the practices through there. So we do mindful listening, whether we're in a park or if we're at a house. I hear your mom cleaning up some of the dishes, or I hear the birds chirping, and then we open our eyes, and what do you see? I see the wind blowing. I see, my cat cleaning himself, or, whatever it is in that moment. And then we start to generalize that into, things they do every day, like at school. I am being mindful while I am working. I am focusing on my work. I am not getting distracted. I am not stressing about an exam I may have, because right now is all I have. And what I need to do is to study, so that when that time comes, I feel prepared and I could be in the moment. So I really do, like, as an OT, I try to relate the mindfulness back to function, instead of it just being like, let's be mindful and be in this present moment, but adding the why behind it. Why do I need to be mindful? How is it going to benefit me? And in what areas of my life can I use it?
Cool.
And then the little ones, it's more of, I read a lot of stories. There's so many wonderful books out there. I share a lot of them on my Instagram page, but talking about, for younger ones, it's that worry, it's the anxiety, it's those new experiences, like starting kindergarten or meeting a new friend. And I use the mindfulness in that, and thinking, I'm starting kindergarten in August. I won't know my teacher, but that's okay. Right now, I know where I am. I know I am safe. And, what are things that I can do if this worry comes up? How can I come back and be mindful and be present? And that's where we do that. It kind of relates back to the self-regulation. I could talk to mom. I could go to the school and meet the teacher first. And so you could kind of see, like, through a lot of these examples, it's mindfulness, but it's not the mindfulness that you would see, that like a monk would do, where we're silent and sit
Right.
there. It's relating it to these emotions in this like everyday modern kind of life. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's connecting the why behind it and not just saying, let's be mindful, and the kid's not really getting it. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's practicing it, and we're even catching myself sometimes in the class, I'll be like, oh, that wasn't very mindful of me. I skipped something because I was so worried about what was coming next. Like, let's take a step back. Let's take a minute to like recenter. Let's tune into what we're seeing or we're hearing or we're smelling, connecting to our senses in our body, and then regrouping. And again, it's honoring and showing that it's not bad to not be mindful. It's not that we need to beat ourselves up if we are unmindful. It's just that we use that as a reminder to come back and regroup and reconnect.
Yeah, yes. I know some people like, and I used to do this at the beginning of my meditation practice. I would like try to be there still for 10 minutes and like with a guided meditation. And then I would start thinking about lunch or something. And I'm like, no, Erica, like I would feel guilty, but now I understand it's totally natural. My mind's always going to float off, and that's normal. It's just bringing it back.
Exactly. And that's what mindfulness is, and finding that awareness, accepting it, and not like beating ourselves up for it, and then returning back. And that's why, the meditation, just doing it over and over. I've been doing mindfulness for so long, and I still think, what's for lunch?
Yeah.
What's on my to-do list? But
hmm
it's just identifying that and being more in tune with your thoughts.
Yeah. I think it's also that kind of reminds me of flow, that concept we learned in school by that guy. I cannot pronounce his name. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't actually.
The concept of flow, it's it's probably the whole alphabet is in his name. It starts with a C. And oh my gosh, I can look it up, but I'm not going to do it justice. But I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I would love to read up on it.
Oh my God, he couldn't have had a harder name. I think he's Russian, or I'm not sure. But it's this concept of flow that I'm hearing a lot of people completely not in the OT world or health world or wellness. Like they're just kind of like people in business or in fitness. They're talking about flow. I'm like, oh, that's actually a concept from borrowed from OT. Well, I don't think it's OT specific, but I think it's definitely, it was heavy when I was in OT school. We learned how that's like as OTs we want to help our clients get into flow where it's not too challenge or sorry, an activity is not too boring, but it's not too challenging, but their experience is flow, like this where time passes and there's no like sense of time, and there's this like effortless yet exciting like activity that you're lost in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely want to read up on it because yeah, that kind of relates almost to like a just right challenge. You want it to
Yes.
be growing but not too easy. But I like how it's related to time and that you kind of like lose yourself in the activity.
Yeah, it's kind of like the just right challenge. Yeah, and I think for yoga, whenever I take yoga, I've even done aerial yoga, which I love.
Yeah,
I
so
feel
that there's another sensory component.
yeah, the inversions.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I feel so tall and like clear when I
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sense of the just right challenge and flow and all this, like why would someone want to go to an OT for yoga, especially if they have sensory needs or if they have a condition.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where the my OT education just really like kind of like upped the ante a little bit with it, and and again, the course relates a lot of the sensory kind of stuff, but having that strong foundation of the sensory processing and the anatomy and physiology and the mental health aspect of it, and even just like the treatment planning or that rapport building, like the ability to build trust with clients. That's something that a yoga teacher, even for adults, you have to learn if that's something you didn't learn in your education. So
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like you and I know others are stepping into this entrepreneurial role and pursuing these amazing things for people. So, like, where do you see your brand and your vision in the next, I don't know, 5 years or even 10 years?
As I had mentioned earlier, I envision a space that I've created and adapted, and have taken input from families and other professionals to build and to share that space with, again, other families and professionals, to make it a safe kind of haven, a place where everyone is accepted, and there are services, like varied services. I've connected with so many different professionals that are in this like holistic and very mindful and I guess the word is holistic kind of approach to treating this population that I'm very passionate about. So having a space, sharing it with other families and professionals, and just having, ironically, the word comes to mind is flow, having it flow like authentically and not feel like it's forced or so overwhelming, because I know in the beginning it's a lot of work to get that up and running, and I want it to be at the point where I have this business, I have this foundation, I have all these resources available, that it's kind of just this ebb and flow of, it works, it's smooth, and I'm in and out, and I have other professionals to collaborate with. And I also think, I was actually just chatting with my best friend, I as much as I am passionate about the OT inspired yoga, I still think I will want to be doing, true, just basic OT, where, whether it's in a hospital or in a school or in a clinic, I still want to have that very like medical based OT, where I am still working in that in different populations, just so I don't get bored. I'm always, always wanting to expand. And that's, I think, another reason that I got drawn to OT, is that it's so variable. There's so many different routes you can take.
Yeah, that's what I'm learning now. And if there's not a route that is out there, like for example, on Indeed.com, I just said a random thing, then you create it. So it's like we're creating it, and there's the possibilities for OT. I think it's endless. Like we're so versatile, and like you said, like if you want to stay like on top of it, so not bored, and so you can, like, you do have the option to do your business and treat clinically, and it's like that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what message would you like to share with other healthcare entrepreneurs, if you can share one piece of advice with them?
To go along with what we were just saying, just to keep your mind open, because I think when I came out of school, it was, I could go to a skilled nursing, I could go to a school, I could go to, like a hospital. Like, keep like you're saying, keep it open. If there's something that you feel could fit with OT, but no one else has done it, it doesn't mean that it can't be done, or it doesn't mean just because, you have student loans and, you have to be working this full-time job where you're kind of running and burning out. That's not the only option. So
Amen.
have faith and keep your mind open, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I'm like, you're preaching to the choir, at least for me. I'm full of all these cliches, by the way. I just love them.
I love it.
So where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. So the best, I'm usually the most on Instagram. I actually have to make sure I say it correctly. So my Instagram handle is Y.ot.ga.
Yeah.
And then from there, pretty much everything is linked. I have a Facebook page and I have my webpage, but also through my webpage, you could reach me through email too. It's just erin.yotga@gmail.com. Because I've also kind of what you do. Sometimes I get emails from other, students applying to OT school or coming out of OT school, like, how did you get into what you are doing? And I love connecting with people like that. I love connecting with anyone and everyone. So definitely reach out.
Oh, yay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you one more question. What makes you your most lit up self?
Great question.
Is that your cat?
I was going to say, did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's what makes me lit up. My dog is annoying.
That was a huge meow.
I'm sorry.
No, I love cats. I'm such a cat person.
Me too. I have two. Anyway, what makes me my most lit up self? See, like I want to say, seeing the families and the kids connect and have those moments of peace and calm. But I also don't want to live in myself just for that, because I think that goes like it's just to my whole life. I've shared this yoga with my husband and my friends, and I brought, my friends and family that would never try yoga to different festivals and free classes here and there. So I think like just what lights me up is bringing this practice and this perspective of life to anyone and everyone that I come across.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Thank you. This is so much fun. I almost don't want to hang up.
I know. We'll have to do a part 2. We'll definitely have to connect in California sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. And good luck to you on all your travels. I think it's so exciting. I'm super excited to follow them and watch your social media.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks again.
Of course. Good luck with everything.
Thanks so much for listening. Like what you're hearing? Subscribe to our podcast, rate, and write a review on iTunes. It would mean the world to us. We come out with new and exciting content each week that will help you slay your burnout beast. So share the show with your friends and your coworkers so we can build a better healthcare industry together. Thanks again.